Reactive Training Systems.
Hey everyone, welcome back. This is part 2 of our interview with Donny Bigham. Part 1 we had last week, so if you haven't seen that yet, make sure that you go back and check that out. Part 2 is about to begin, so enjoy.
Donny, do you take outside people in your facility? Because I'm sure that people are going to be like, how do I get in there? This is
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, Adam can attest to that, because he's already then came in here and got an opportunity to work out here.
I'm a unique situation though, because I have access to the base, being that I'm also a field grade officer. So
yeah, but I can still tell you that we sign for a lot of people to come on base. Sure. We do have a numerous amount of people that comes through our gym. I have about 12 clients in this area, and a good bit of them still use this gym, and 4 of them's not even in the military. So
oh wow.
It is a little bit of special. You have to do a little bit of extra attention to detail, but sometimes I just go to them if it ends up being a problem.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. So how would somebody go about getting in touch with you if they wanted to find out more or come down for a visit or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to get in touch with me is, either my email or my cell phone to get in touch with me that way. And they could definitely come down here and get a training session in.
All right. Kind of to turn the conversation, I guess, back more towards the course that you teach. What sort of concepts do you teach in the course? Like you were saying that you're trying to take somebody who potentially has little or no experience with physical training and then ramp them up so that they can be qualified personal trainer for their unit by the time that they go back. So what sort of things are encompassed in that education?
Well, again, it's about 140 hours, for the course. And again, we cover skeletal, muscle anatomy, exercise, muscle physiology, kinesiology, performance nutrition, strength and mobility. We focus on the power of 3. We don't really do a lot of Olympic lifting because that's a little bit more advanced for our course. Gait analysis for running techniques and foot march. And then we do program design for auto regulation, RPE, and we incorporate different coaching cues to allow them to understand, for example, the power of 3 or how to determine if somebody's supinating or pronating their foot, on the run and how to correct that. We also incorporate kettlebell training. We do the functional movement screen. They understand how to conduct that. And then we do TRX training. So they're very diverse of what tools we give them. And again, as you can see in a 140-hour course, it's a lot of information, especially for somebody coming in that maybe doesn't have, a basic knowledge base or doesn't have the passion. The criteria for the unit is a unit's supposed to select somebody within the organization that is, one, physically fit, because we do give them a test in the beginning. If they don't meet those gates, they don't get to stay in the course. And then the second piece is that they have some kind of desire or a passion or something that's motivating them wanting to serve in that capacity.
So military training in general has a reputation for being super endurance heavy. Just from listening to you talk, it sounds like what you're teaching is really diverse, but it's not all powerlifting either. You're obviously not just teaching people, hey, be a powerlifter. So what is that balance? Is that an accurate representation?
That is correct. What I'm teaching on, what I'm teaching on right now, Mike, is what we call a 2025 model. Our envision and our goal for the Army is essentially every battalion. There's 750 battalions in the Army. Every battalion will have their own advising team. That team will consist of a strength coach that has a CSCS and a master's degree. It will consist of, obviously, some of the medical personnel. They'll have some athletic trainers, but they'll have about a $2.5 million facility in every battalion. And now that organization, each battalion is comprised of anywhere from 400 to 750 soldiers. They have the capability now to do strength training. They have the capability of having someone that has the knowledge to write the prescription to set that unit up and that individual up for success so that they can be successful, on the battlefield. That is our intention. Can it happen overnight? No. But we are taking small steps in the right direction. We're trying to move away from an endurance and a body weight focus to allow us to build a base of strength So it gives us ability now to not only reduce injuries, but to increase our performance.
Okay.
So, no, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Mike.
Adam.
All right. So, Donny, have the other services approached you at all to kind of come down and see what you're doing? I would think the Marines would have a very distinct and similar interest in what you're doing there.
Well, it's great that you asked that, Adam, because I've already had a dialogue with the Marines. We was over at their location up in Virginia about a little over a month ago. They're looking to want to try to start up a master fitness course, something very similar to what we're running. They wanted to kind of take a look and see how we cross our T's and dot our I's and how we set the conditions for personal trainers in the units.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Air Force and the Navy has not jumped on board yet. We have had some of their airmen and some of the sailors have come and attended the course. Just like our course right now, we have 6 people from the New York Fire Department that's in our course. So we're getting a lot of people from across the spectrum that are really interested in what we're doing and really coming with the right attitude and hopefully walking away with some things, in their kit bag so they can make a difference tomorrow in their organization.
Yeah, I'm kind of partial to the Air Force, so I would really kind of hope that someday the Air Force might decide to invest in the people in the same way that the Army has done in this case. So, yeah, here's some wishful thinking, maybe.
I think the Air Force needs to drop the waist measurement before they get to that level of being
We'll see. No comment here.
Yeah, maybe I have the freedom to say those things nowadays, but
I don't, especially not as an FTO.
But, so Donny, so we talk a little bit about your training. We talk a little bit about what you're doing there, which is really cool to see how they blend together. How do you deal with injuries in either case, either for yourself, but as a lifter, like you were talking about, having a knee injury, and how do you deal with injuries in the class, or how do you teach your students to deal with injuries?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and answer your second question first, Mike, and that is, dealing with the soldiers that come to our class and how to deal with injuries. Obviously, they have resources available within every brigade footprint. It's typically, they got a PA and they have a physical therapist. So they will utilize the medical and lean on those guys and gals first. But what we teach them is what we call reconditioning. So we give them modifications to different exercises. For example, we give them different scenarios. Okay, you had a soldier that, has rolled their ankle. Their ankle is broke. What exercises now can they do to still build strength in the pelvic girdle? So we go through those modalities so they understand there is some other options out there that allows a soldier to continue to at least maintain and maybe not digress too much during that injury. Now, obviously, if there's something with a spinal cord, or something in the back area that doesn't allow them to really do anything under load or not allow them to move, we have to allow them to be able to do things like what we use in our course is we use an Alt-G. An Alt-G is typically a running device, and it allows them to run without gravity. So it allows them now to modify. So if I weigh 200 pounds, I can put it on 20%, and now I'm running with only 20 pounds in impacting on every strike versus 200 pounds. So we do teach them that. We do give them exposure to these other tools. And the good thing is most installations at some place, whether it's the hospital or whether it's a physical therapy community, they've got those tools. So now that personal trainer can take that soldier and take them to that organization, link up with them, and give them a training regimen that allows them to modify.
That's awesome. And I don't know, I kind of feel like I'm talking to a version of myself a little bit. We do something real similar. I mean, we're working predominantly with powerlifters. So if we have somebody that's injured, when they're to the point where they can, resume some activity, even if it's not full training, we'll start them out with something like maybe 15% of 1 rep max. And as long as they're able to perform the movement pain-free, then we'll continue to progress them. And the speed of their progress depends on the speed of their healing. But yeah, you can still do something, work around it if you can, and then reintroduce yourself back into normal training as you continue to heal up.
Most definitely. And I'm going to tell you from my perspective, dealing with injuries, if the movement pattern puts me in a position to be over a scale of 3 out of a 10, I'm not going to do that movement pattern until I can get it below 3 consistently. So I will do as many modification, whether it ends up being with a band, whether I have to go with a single movement pattern versus a multi-joint movement pattern, those type of things. So, for example, when I hurt my knee, I did a lot of things with not only my left side, but I did a lot of things like reverse hypers, to target my glute, to target my rectus spinus instead of maybe doing deadlifts. So it gave me an opportunity of not being suspended under a load, but still able to maintain some of that strength that I had.
Right. Now, I know Adam and I have been both working with Jake, who's the RTS movement specialist that we've got on our team, and he says the same thing. When you're working through some of these injury type issues, not really injuries, but it still hurts kind of thing. Same sort of recommendation. 3 out of 10 on the pain scale is as high as we want to go, and then of course we can stay below that. Then, that's good news.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's he has some interesting things that he teaches too in terms of kind of a progression that graduates tension, but still has a pretty high neural stimulus. So we might start out by focusing on stability. I'll use myself as an example just because I'm most familiar with it. I'm working on my deadlift right now. So when we started out, we were focusing on stability, and boy, I would shake. So I would deadlift up to the top and then slow the eccentric down and pause around the knee. I'd shake the whole way down, But
yeah.
and I was kind of skeptical at first too. I'm like, well, this is just slow deadlifting. Like, how's this going to help? But pleasantly surprised. I'm so far so good. Things have been surprisingly pain-free.
That's a win-win, when you can do that. So like a modification I did for my squat, since I couldn't work out of parallel with my knee, I would put obviously less weight on the bar, but then add band tension to still give me the neuromuscular activity outside of beyond my sticking point. So I didn't have to mess with having a valgus collapse in my knee because of the slight tear on the right hand side. It allowed me to work out of the hole. And then again, the band gave me that ability to still continue to promote that stimuli.
Nice.
So I was going to comment that I think it's funny that you said you feel like you're talking to a version of yourself, Mike, because Donny and when I was watching his training, we were doing that session, I was like, Donny, you might be more neurotic about your training and recording your training than Mike is.
Well, Donny, do you bring a laptop with you to the gym?
Yes, I do. And
Holy shit. So, yeah, it is kind of a version of myself.
That's funny.
Wow, that's cool, though. There you go. You got the distinction of being the only other person that I know of that carries a laptop.
I have I guess, might be the next one with a camera, too.
Yeah, so, there's always more to be done, right?
Yeah. That's right. No doubt.
That's cool, though, to kind of go back to what you were saying about how you work through those challenges and stuff. But that was one of my big takeaways. I've been talking about for the last couple podcasts about how I was injured going into Raw Nationals. And that was one of my lessons learned from that is I wish that I would have been a little bit more aggressive about working around injuries when that happened. I would say if I could do it over again, that would be something I would do different.
People get nervous. People get nervous about working around injuries. That's what I see in the gym. Someone's hurt and they don't want to stop lifting. They don't want to stop doing the thing that they think is going to I've seen it a lot, and it takes a lot to kind of get into their heads a little bit and say, hey, just step back. Just the way that you had to get in your own head, Donny, and say, step back. There's plenty that I can do to work around this, get other bits stronger, use this as an opportunity rather than a failure.
Right.
That's right. You're definitely right. There's a psychological part that comes into play, and it's unfortunate, that a lot of people don't take that in consideration, but that is a difference and a game changer for you.
Yeah, definitely. And to be able to have that resiliency to say, yeah, this happened. No, it's not ideal, but I'm going to make the best of the situation that I'm in. I wrote about that a while back. You guys remember that movie Safe House? I tell the story from time to time. Yeah. This Denzel Washington movie, and he's supposed to be like this super spy, you know? And it's like the opening scene, he's running through the streets and the bad guys are chasing him, you know? And he's kind of getting away, but they're on his tail, and he comes out of this building, and behind him there's bad guys, and then off to either side there's bad guys. And in front of him there's like a U.S. consulate. Now, Denzel's the super spy, and you find out later that he's also a traitor, and if he goes in the consulate, he knows that he's going to get tortured, right? So he looks, and like on the left, death, right, death, behind me, death, in front of me, torture. He goes, I'll take the torture, and just goes, you know. And I'm watching that, and I'm going, how many other people are like looking around for like this secret hidden ladder, you know, this escape route, and they waste this time, and they end up getting this suboptimal choice because they're not accepting what's around them and taking the best available action, you know. And it happens a lot, you know. So
I think that separates people out. Honestly, that separates out what I would call a power lifter and say someone who's dabbling in the sport. To me, a power lifter is someone who's going to suffer through it. It shows me a lot as a coach when I see somebody, how they deal with their first injury, and if they're going to stick around or if they're going to disappear or if they're just going to take it and get stronger.
Yeah. And we do end up spending a lot of time talking about injuries and stuff like that. And it's not that it needs to be an all the time occurrence, or that you always have to be beat up or working around stuff. But I think it's just what you're talking about, Paulie, that it's a good insight into how an athlete, a lifter approaches this mentally. You know, what sort of tools do they have in their toolbox to deal with the mental side of the sport? Which everybody acknowledges. Everybody says, you know, there's so much, the mental game is so important to sporting success. But if that's all we ever say about it, then how important could it really be?
How much, Mike, do y'all incorporate in, you know, training your clients from a mental aspect? What do y'all typically like to use? I got some things that I used on the Army side and things that I've used in my training. I was just curious what y'all use.
I think a lot of it for us is kind of baked into the process. You know, I mean, we just, the training is hard. And I know it's hard, and because they like to tell me that it's hard on Facebook. And I think that over time can forge a person's mental toughness, coping mechanisms and stuff like that. I think it builds, it's a little cliche to hear, but I think it builds character, you know. But yeah, I mean, we don't do a whole lot of like specific stuff, but I think it's just kind of baked into the process. You know? A lot of it's cultural.
Yeah, one of the things that I've done and I've incorporated also because, you know, I trained some of the elite athletes in the Army. For example, I trained 2 guys from Fort Jackson last year that, you know, placed in the top 14 in the best Ranger competition, which I don't know how much y'all know about that. But that's a pretty audacious task to do a 62-hour event that covers over 60-plus miles under 100 pounds of load. There's a lot of movement patterns that you got to incorporate in a lot of training. But I bring in a sports psychologist. I've used it on a few of my peaking training cycles, and they incorporate things like, you know, threading a needle, incorporate some things like hitting a ball into a bucket, a little cup in between sets to allow me to focus mentally, to allow my breathing to be under control, and to allow me to be able to hopefully allow that to, you know, carry over onto the platform.
So those are new concepts to me, and I'm sure they'll be new to some of our listeners. Can you elaborate on some of that? Like, what do you mean by that, and what do you intend to get out of it?
I think Donny literally means threading a needle. So
yeah, I gather, but
make a cake.
You mentioned hitting the ball into a bucket, so we're going to want to know how big is the ball, how far away is the bucket, how many times do you do between sets.
Okay. But like I said, what it is you're actually going to be hitting a golf ball into a plastic cup that could be anywhere from 10 to 15 years apart. Okay. what it's allowing you to do is to be able to cognitively, because I've done a couple written tests in between like the 7 to 8 minute rest cycle, to be able to allow you to have the ability to slow down, to learn to control your breathing better, to have that rest recovery. Because if you don't breathe properly, you're not going to be able to do things like with minor muscles, and you're not going to be able to do things cognitively that really requires you to concentrate a little bit. So, for example, if I give somebody a basic a couple math questions after, let's say, doing a 2-hour foot march, they tend to not really focus and can even answer those questions properly. That is a very good correlation to understand how well they breathe and how well mentally they're prepared for that task.
So what you're saying is by having these other minor tasks that you're maybe training the athlete to slow down and focus on what you're doing. You know, I had a question that came in the group coaching call this week. A guy was asking me about higher rep squatting. You know, he was saying that his performance on, say, a 5-rep squat is like this, but once we go up to 7 reps, it drops off. And he's saying he's too gassed to use any more weight than that. And he wondered, you know, what my advice was on it. And I mean, aside from, you know, improving your aerobic fitness, which, you know, for a power lifter I mean, it's not going to be a negative thing, I don't think, but, you know, how much of it's going to have a primary impact on your results, I don't know. But what I told him was basically, you're breathing between reps. You're not going to pass out. Just focus yourself, have some discipline, take a breath, hold it, and brace properly, you know. And I mean, I think it's also easy for me to say because I've done it. I've been practicing doing it for a long time. But that's a skill that you have to develop, and maybe what the drills that you're talking about help a lifter develop those skills.
That's great. Now, I think it's applicable, you know, in any aspect from a performance standpoint. It's just based on where you apply that. And why I think it's more applicable towards a peaking cycle, because, again, it's gearing you to be able to focus in between that lift to allow you to hopefully set the platform and not no distractions, not allow other things to deter from you being able to, you know, hit those same marks that you should have hit in training.
Right. And I mean, even with technical issues too, right? So like, yeah, you're fatigued. Yeah, you're tired, but still dial it in, focus on what you're supposed to be doing and execute how you know that you're supposed to. It's when you get tired and you're, I just don't want to be here and things get sloppy, you know, of course that's bad. But if you train yourself to pull in that focus, and who cares that you're tired, whatever, you know, just focus on the task at hand. Yeah, I see a lot of value in that. So if we have any of our lifters who happen to be listening to this, go ahead and get a ball and a cup, and we'll be
yeah, hit you a few balls in between. Again, I had a sports psychologist that she came in and had me do that. And I've done it about 2 years ago and tried it. I tried it out, you know. I said, I have nothing to lose. I was going to the Arnold, and the Arnold was really, you know, it's kind of a showcase. It's a great competition, but it's not a world championship. So I ran that prior to going to there and applied it to see what it would do.
No, I think it's a great idea. It's a really cool idea. So
it's kind of corny when you think about it, though, inside of the gym hitting golf balls.
I can imagine like all these big old lifters with a needle and a thread. Yeah. Oh, this is going to be fun.
Oh yeah, no, we'll. I'm going to have everybody knitting sweaters and baking cakes tonight.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you've got a whole crew there, Paulie.
Yeah, exactly. I can test it out.
Turn this into something productive.
But, you know, funny enough, we do that a little bit just by sometimes creating banter in the gym. Just you know, we know when to talk, we know when to be quiet, and sometimes we need to create a little bit of banter just to distract people from their so-called intensity while they're training, just to take it down a little bit so they can focus, because there's no way that you can be intense for an entire training session. And just like you were saying, Donnie, we need to be in control.
Now, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of a device called a K4. Have y'all ever heard of those?
No.
Sounds like an acronym.
It's essentially a VO2 max machine, but it's portable, okay? And it can go on your back, and you wear a respirator on your face, and it collects all the data. Okay, again, I tell you, I'm a data guy.
Yeah.
So I take those, and a lot of times when I do my AMRAP cycles for deadlifts, I wear it. So I know where my heart rate is during the cycle, and I know where it is at the end. So I can learn how to recover my heart rate better by knowing what energy systems I'm working from, because it pulls energy systems and it collects that data to know exactly where your max heart rate is versus your resting heart rate, obviously, when you start. It takes in consideration your oxygen consumption. So again, I've tried some of those tools, and there's some benefit to certain exercises to allow you to be able to look at it from an anaerobic standpoint.
Man, so just that one piece right there gives me about 5 or 10 more questions to ask you, but I think we're gonna have to call it there.
That sounds good, Mike. I understand.
Well, obviously there's plenty to talk about, so hopefully we'll have you on again for part 3 at some point in the future. Donnie, it was really good getting to chat with you, and thanks so much for taking some time. Yeah, thanks Adam and Polly for hanging out with us. Yeah, everybody get a needle and thread, and yeah, we've got a lot of new ideas coming out of this one.
Post it up to Facebook. Well,
Right. How hitting a ball into a cup can improve your squat.
That's funny.
No,
That'll be the title.
In all
of this,
seriousness, though, I do think it's a really cool idea, and a lot of this is really cool ideas. So, again, Donnie, thanks a lot for hanging out with us. I really appreciate it. Everybody for watching, thank you so much for watching, tuning in. As always, take what's there in your training. See you guys next time.
Sweet.